I want to turn now to our special report tonight here on The Beat with new information about how a seemingly minor jaywalking stop turned into this, a warning the video is disturbing. That is the scuffling which proved to be the last moment of Kurt Reinhold's life. The 42-year-old father of two was shot to death by police there in broad daylight. He was unarmed, and he was not suspected of any serious felony or misconduct at all. He was stopped for alleged jaywalking, an infraction in California that carries a $250 ticket and is also rarely enforced to begin with. Now, to understand this incident, and why so many of these incidents in American policing prove controversial, it also helps to see what led up to that scuffle, which is our special report tonight, building on our coverage of this case. Tonight, we can actually show you more of precisely that lead up, because the Orange County Sheriff's Department has just released more video. Only after pressure, we should note, from the public, from recent protests, from press coverage, and a lawsuit. And now this video evidence sheds more light on the officer's mentality going into the stop. We can hear the officers on dash cam video and other video before they even make contact with Reinhold, and they argue over whether to approach him at all. So now on this tape, newly available, I want you to listen as one officer appears to verbally push back against the other, more aggressive officer, saying the situation, before they even made the stop, the situation is, quote, controlled and doesn't merit stopping Reinhold.
Like this is a jaywalking. You need to have a control. There we go. You shit me, dude. It's control, man. I don't know. It is. It's like the guy just stopped in the middle. Don't make case law, Gabriel. Not case law. Identify him, huh?
So before there was any stop, before what we showed you just earlier, before any scuffle, you have one officer already concerned this may not be a worthwhile or valid stop. The officer says, don't make case law, which sounds like referencing what could become a questionable precedent. Don't turn this stop into a case about crossing the line or where the line is. But they went ahead and they did pull up to Reinhold. And before even telling him why they are stopping him or if he's technically under arrest yet, you're going to see they start saying if he does not stop, they will, quote, make him stop. Quite the escalation for this alleged jaywalking.
How you doing? How you doing?
Hey, you need to stop.
From ECR inside here, bro.
You can hear, even with this off-camera partial audio, how quickly this whole thing escalated by the choice of the officers. Already, it doesn't look like a stop that's making the neighborhood much safer. It looks like a stop that's escalating a situation with an unarmed person minding his own business, who then is asking, where did he even jaywalk? And then a concerned witness took cell phone video, which shows more of this from another angle.
Where did I jaywalk? Stop touching! Stop touching! Stop touching! On me! Why are you stopping? Stop touching! Stop touching! Stop touching, bro! What is your problem? Why are you touching me? Why are you touching me? Why are you touching me? For what? Who are you?
As they argue and the video continues, there appears to be an effort by Reinhold to just get away. Then the officers tackle him, which includes the one officer who initially cautioned against the stop, saying things were under control. As it escalates, moments later, an officer says Reinhold has his gun, and they kill him with 2 shots.
I got it.
And it was over just like that. Now we have more information about how it ever got to that point. How an officer twice insisted, remember, this was a controlled situation that didn't merit the police getting involved.
Control. There we go. You didn't need anything. It's control, man.
It's controlled, man. And it was until it wasn't. These officers killed Reinhold in September. What's new now is the evidence, the video. As part of our reporting, you should know the police also released this photo, which they argue shows Reinhold trying to get the officer's gun. The longer video presents a lot of evidence that shows the stop was so dubious, though, even one officer was objecting to it before it began. Reinhold's family argues the video also shows the escalation and confrontation was driven by the police. Indeed, under the law, whatever you think of this policing, if a suspect chooses to flee a jaywalking stop, it is illegal for police to use deadly force to stop them from fleeing. They need more of a justification than that. Now, without the video, this might be another story that is a blip in the news of police just saying they had to use force against a dangerous suspect grabbing their gun. With the video, if people take the time to learn about the entire context, it really does look like something else. We've been reporting this story out, and tonight we have an attorney for Mr. Reinhold's wife, John Taylor. They have filed a wrongful death suit, and we are also joined by Black Lives Matter activist DeRay McKesson. Thanks to both of you for being here. John, what do you think is important about the newer video evidence?
These are homeless liaison officers. Their job is to assist people who are in some sort of distress. And Mr. Reinhold is not a danger to himself. He's not a danger to others. He is not doing anything illegal. He is got a can of iced tea. He's come out of the liquor store. And you can hear the officers as they have targeted him from across the street. And it is an absolute racially motivated stop. There is nothing that he has done that is a reasonable suspicion of a crime that gives them any basis to even stop him. And they discuss that. And the one officer, when he's saying it's controlled, he's talking about that Reinhold is crossing in the controlled intersection. He's not jaywalking. He's not between or in the middle of the block. And I think that this is so clear and so powerful that when the sheriff held a press conference the day after the shooting, they released the footage from the surveillance camera from the motel, which showed Reinhold supposedly grabbing at the officer's, the deputy's gun. But they did not release this video because this video clearly shows that these deputies had no basis to stop him. So they create the confrontation, they escalate the confrontation, and they end up taking his life.
DeRay?
Yeah, you know, we see so many things that play in this video. The first is we see the limitations of body cameras. People thought that body cameras, people thought that footage, people thought that the police knowing that they are being recorded is going to be the thing that changes their behavior. Like, it doesn't happen. We look at 2020, the police actually killed more people in 2020 than every year but 2018, and it's just increasing. And you think about California. California is one of the 21 states that has an officer bill of rights. And imagine if you had a job where you knew you weren't going to get fired and you knew it was almost impossible to get charged with a crime or convicted. That's police. So these are sheriffs, the sheriff's deputy's office. It's like, we are living in the wild, wild west of policing that the media coverage of last year made people think that something was getting better. But all the data we look at says the exact opposite. In this case, is also a reminder that the vast majority of encounters that lead to police killings are not even cases where there is suspected violence happening in the first place. The police would like you to believe that violence is happening and therefore they had to be violent. Like that's sort of the narrative. But most of the cases look something like this, where somebody's minding their own business, the police create the confrontation that leads to something else. And it's only when people demand some sort of footage or anything that we know anything happened. And yet these officers, I think, are back on duty. You know, they're not even, what happened? You know, they're back on duty. That's wild.
Yeah, John, some people see some of these interactions and say, well, why wasn't the individual more compliant? Why did they push back at all? What do you see as what is in or missing in the police operational conduct? Because as I pointed out in our report, they don't begin by even identifying whether the person's under arrest or not. If you're not under arrest, and in America, you may walk wherever you choose because you're not under arrest. If you are under arrest, the police rules are that that has to be identified, and then you proceed from there. What did you think about the way they initiated that aspect even before it got to force?
Well, that's the problem, is that they have a disagreement between each other, where one's saying he's jaywalking or there it is, and the other officer says no, it's not, and then they have this debate. Don't make case law, Gabriel, where he's saying this is a Mickey Mouse thing that we're going to do to even stop and talk to this guy. And so unless the person consents to stop and talk, you don't have to stop. The police stop there and want to talk to you. If you've done nothing and there's no reasonable suspicion that a crime's been committed, you can walk away. And if just run this whole tape again and make the person white, and this stop doesn't happen and the shooting doesn't happen.
Correct.
And the invitation to stop really isn't that inviting. Both of these officers are wearing their rubber gloves when they get out of the car. And in the third person's video, the cell phone video, the officer to the left is clearly seen holding his taser. And so Mr. Reinhold, who's been standing there minding his own business, is now confronted with two officers who are approaching him. They're cutting him off from where he's moving to. They raise and escalate their voices. And the one officer, as I said, to the officer to the right, in his left hand is his taser. And so it seems like they have, an intention to go put their hands on this person. They have no reason. And Kurt Reinhold, tries to understand where they're coming from. He asks, why are you touching me? Why are you stopping me? And then says, keep your hands off me, keep your hands off me. And instead, the deputy persists and persists. And then with no plan, no warning or a discussion between themselves, they just take him to the ground. And once they go to the ground,
well, so
it's all up.
Right. And I got 30 seconds left. John's case turns on what he can prove in court about what was wrong with this legally. DeRay, with 30 seconds, what's the policy, whether this was technically illegal under current law or not? What's your view of a policy problem if the police interaction here is what creates the danger, and otherwise there wasn't danger?
Yeah, so I think the question is, what will the governor and the legislature do? Is that they could repeal the Officer Bill of Rights tomorrow. They could enhance disciplinary sanctions for officers tomorrow. We could limit the power of sheriffs so that they don't have like wanton power to do whatever they want in communities. All that stuff is possible. But, in California, the Democrats get a lot of money from the police. So, will they actually push back against their power? That's the question. But the governor has a lot of power. The legislature, they have power to make substantive change today. The question is, will they?
Yeah. DeRay McKesson and John Taylor, thanks to both of you for joining us. There's a lot going on, but this is a story we've been reporting that will stay on